Good evening, patriots and freedom fighters throughout Saskatchewan, across the country, and around the world. How are we all doing tonight? Well, the day has come and just about gone. And here we are. How are we doing? How's the response to watching China Joe being inaugurated today? Excuse me. You know, if I'm honest, I can't say I'm that surprised. I thought I would be more surprised or shocked, but I'm actually not in a strange sort of way. Disappointed that no triggers were pulled, and that's a figure of speech, by the way, YouTube, Twitter. Actually, that's a good point. Marty says not relevant. I'm scoped on Canadian issues. I was gonna be part of my intro. I have been hyper focused and consumed by what's happening down south. While still trying to stay up, obviously, on what's happening to us here. But that was a big moment in history. It didn't play out the way a lot of us had hoped. It didn't play out the way a lot of us thought it could. And I know there's some Q folks in the room too that follow Q. Didn't pan out the way they thought necessarily. Of course, Q tends to move their goalposts quite a bit, so I'm seeing some movement of goalposts as we speak. But I'm not even going to dive into all that stuff. Fact is here we are. I'm not sure it's over. I think there's going to be lots coming. Texas has already declared that they're going to file lawsuits against Biden administration. So, this thing will carry on, and it'll keep going. And there's lots to address, and none of this means the end, although it feels like it sometimes. But it is what it is. At the end of the day, we tend to put our eggs in one basket, and we tend to hope that there's a quick fix to what we're seeing and to what the problem is. I've been talking about globalism well before Trump. And this problem has been around well before Trump. It was a problem during Trump, and it's going to continue to be a problem. Not only for the Americans, but for Canadians and for people throughout the Western world. So as much as what happened there didn't suit our hopes, it's the battle rages on, and we have to take responsibility. We have to take our own responsibility, because we are the only ones that can change it. And even, even moving forward, I know it's hard. I know it's hard to stay motivated and stay, energized and inspired. But this actually inspires me just harder, because we've seen for 4 years that we can beat the deep state. We just have to be better at the game than they are. But ultimately, we need to play it with the people behind us. So the battle rages on. We carry on, and we got a huge battle right here in Canada that we have to focus on. So regardless of what happens in the States, course, I'll be keeping an ear and an eye on everything that goes on, but we really got to start focusing on what's happening here. And again, I know a lot of hopes rested on Trump, rightly or wrongly. I think, we really have our own battle here, and we got to take care of business here. And the only way we take care of business here is defeating the media narrative and getting the information to the people, to the masses. It's the only way. It's the only path that we come out on top. That's the recipe. So that's what we have to do. Wilfred said Trump just made Patriots targets. I'm not sure that's completely fair. We choose our own paths as well. We choose our own direction. I'm fully prepared and have been for a long time to take the heat that comes with being in the position that we choose to be in. It is what it is. Right is right. Principles are principles, regardless. Trump represented that for me. And I said it, before the election of Trump. I said it to my wife numerous times. He's going to win. And I like what he's saying. I like that he's sort of anti-establishment. The Republicans hated him. The Democrats hated him, which, made me happy because it meant that what he wanted to do was outside of the establishment. But I said to my wife numerous times, I love what he's saying. I love what he's representing, but I wish it was somebody else. I wish it was somebody else. Like, for example, General Flynn. But regardless of who it was going to be, Trump was able to do it. He was able to bust through the establishment and get himself elected. And he was the guy. So that was that. And that's what we've watched for the last 4 years. If it wasn't going to be Trump, who was a relatively easy target, I think. But part of that was his style. Part of that was his attraction for a lot of people. So, he was what he was. If it would have been anyone else, they would have been run through the ringer. If they were anti-establishment, they would have been run through the ringer just as bad as Trump was. So, regardless, it is what it is. Here we are. We'll move forward and keep fighting. Yeah, the UN won the election, and those who control the UN are unscheduled. Biden is simply a UN plug. Absolutely, 100%. Bang on. And that's why they work so hard to make sure that Biden was, or is now, at least inaugurated as president. He was the piece, and it's an enormous piece. The UN, the globalists, absolutely need the United States on side. They need them. They need them for their money. They need them for their influence. They need them for their global clout. They're absolutely necessary to being successful at what they want to achieve. And for the moment, they have that. So I don't think Biden's going to be around much longer. I think some form, some way, they're going to nudge him out fairly soon, and it's going to be Kamala. And they'll keep moving forward with, I hope, as much resistance as possible. But the swamp is deep. Trump did not succeed in draining the swamp. And that's where we're at. So our fight got that much tougher. But again, our fight is here. Rob says Biden should have chopstick in his hair to signal who pulls the strings. Yeah, absolutely, 100% there too. And that's it. I mean, we talk about the globalist agenda. Well, that's being steered by China. So it's all relative. It's all connected. It's all part of the equation. Yeah, Desiree, I've heard that too, and I'm just going to let things play out. It's been a hell of a 3 months since the election. But I have heard that. I've heard that being tossed around in some Q circles and some other circles. I'll believe it when I see it. I'll just let it happen. I can't I can't be focused like this so much on what's happening. If that's the case, great. Fantastic. March 4th, we'll come and see what happens. But I'm just gonna let it happen, and we got too much to deal with here again. So, so it's crazy. I'm sure you guys have seen this video. Oh, before I get to it, a couple of things. So tonight's predominant discussion is going to be in regards to the PCR and some COVID talk. Even though I'm sharing information from the World Health Organization, chances are probably pretty good this will be my last show on YouTube, because they really don't like this sort of talk. So I'm going to try and avoid it through some of the language I use, but I think it's inevitable. So I would suggest, if you guys are interested in watching my live streams on YouTube, that you head over to DLive after this episode and sign up there, because the chances are pretty good. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, like I said, I am sharing actual World Health Organization information, which is actually this exact same information that I shared on YouTube and on Facebook that got me suspended around the same time this last go around. So we'll see, but the chances are probably pretty good. This might be my last, because I'm on my second strike, one more, and I'm done. So you may want to head over to DLive Grizzly Patriot, and hello over to the folks at DLive right now. I don't have you on my screen. I can't read your chat because I still haven't fixed my internet issues. I have a tech coming over on Friday to get things squared away, because something's not right. It's probably one of my lines or something. I don't know. They're going to figure it out. So I don't have DLive up right now because it slows everything down and makes everything ridiculous. So head over to DLive. Thanks, Rio. Appreciate it, buddy. To that link over there, just Grizzly Patriot over at DLive. You can also follow me on Odyssey, which has archived all my videos that I've done to this point on YouTube. And they're talking about a live streaming option coming as well. They're just beta testing it right now. So that's good. And you can also follow me on Rumble. Again, that's Grizzly Patriot for all these. And you can follow me on Rumble as well, Grizzly Patriot. They're also talking about a live stream. So there are options, but you guys have to get over there. You guys have to register these things. And in the interim, I'll be using DLive, and I'll probably continue using DLive until they turf me too. But as far as I know, we're still on there. I haven't even checked, but I assume we are. So yeah, just be aware of that. That's most likely gonna happen. Anyways, yeah, Rumble should be live streaming soon. That's what I keep hearing out. And that'll be good, because I like Rumble. From what I can tell, it's still pretty open there. And I like their format and the platform, and it's all good. So I think Rumble will be one. But definitely Odyssey is also a free speech platform. So we have options, but we got to use the options. So again, if you're on YouTube, I'm sticking around as long as I can, but at some point, and maybe after this episode, poof, away I go. You can also follow, if you don't want to listen to politics, you can follow my other YouTube channel, which is the Grizz Outdoors. But that's not political. That's just all to do with my outdoor activity. And I haven't been able to do much middle of winter, and I still have this polymyalgia thing. And yeah, so I'm not doing much for winter camping. It's sort of let this thing do what it does. And then hopefully by the spring, we'll get it squared away. Let's see. Well, I'm sure most of you have seen this video, and this is where we're going to start tonight. This one should make your blood boil. God knows it made mine boil.
Next set of questions comes from Joe at Global News. The city of Winnipeg has been operating its in-house gyms exclusively for employees during set of questions comes from Joe at Global News. The city of Winnipeg has been operating its in-house gyms exclusively for employees during the level red. The city says it got permission to do so from the province. Can you confirm the city was given permission and why?
So we weren't given, specific permission. Our public health orders don't apply to any levels of government. So they don't apply to federal, provincial, or municipal governments. So, so I am aware of health inspectors had visited some of these gyms and found them safe. But the real issue, they weren't given an exemption outside.
Sorry, guys. Is what it is. It's until I get this issue fixed, I guess videos are off the table. But you guys have probably already seen it all. If you haven't, it's on my YouTube channel. Share it out. Basically, in a nutshell, rules for thee, not for me. I perfectly out in the open, without a blink of the eye. Here, this is for all you serfs and slaves. Don't worry about what we're doing. All good. We don't care if your businesses are going under. We don't care if your gyms are going under. We're the government, and we'll do whatever the hell we want, and it doesn't matter what you slaves say. And he said it just so matter of factly, like it's just completely normal. That's just how it is. Get used to it, slave. It's where we are. It's where we are. Start downloading video. Hey, that's a good idea. I actually have it downloaded. Yeah, I will do that. But as of Friday, I won't have to. This is a short-term thing, but that's a good idea, actually. I could have definitely played it that way. But yeah, it's just sheer and utter hypocrisy and arrogance, and it's just out in the open. There it is for all to see. I mean, if it doesn't make everyone's blood boil, I don't care what politics you have. I don't care who you support. Man, if you support that kind of thing, there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong. And I'm judging by the response. There's a lot of that pissed a lot of people off. So hopefully, things like that will wake more people up. Corbett's last video was a great one too. I'm gonna have to check it out. I haven't watched Corbett in a bit. No point in having lockdown. There are those those exempt. This pandemic is a hoax, just as Dr. Hodgkinson said. Yeah, absolutely, it's a hoax, 100%. But here's the thing. So for roughly 8 months, maybe 9 months, I'm not sure when I first was presented with this information, but it was very early on. It's essentially what pulled me out of what Frank Vaughn was talking about. And I'm not doing this to shit talk Frank. I followed Frank regularly when this thing first came to be. And I trusted his judgment and so on. And he had a lot of good information. And so I took it for what it was. But I think it was the PCR that really got me saying, well, wait a minute. What's going on here? There's too many other things being brought to light that, we need to look at and we need to consider. So for at least 8 months, we've been talking about the PCR. The reason why us non-scientists, non-doctor class, have been talking about the PCR is because of, well, doctors like Dr. Hodgkinson, although he was a little bit late getting into the game, at least expressing his views openly. But there was plenty of other doctors. Dr. Yeadon has been a doctor that has railed against this for a long time. In fact, I think he was one of the first I watched. And you had groups like Oxford, for example, here. And they were very critical of the PCR. And I'm not going to read all through this. I just want to give you an example of sources that we've been using to try and figure out what's going on. So I encourage you, the links are in the description. I encourage you guys to go through this again if you need to. We've probably all beat this dead horse literally to death over and over. But this is one of the studies. Another one is from the British Medical Journal. They talk about it. And there's also, let me just pull up my bookmarks here, and I'll pull up another one that I use. Of course, we have the Portugal court ruling against the PCR test. And where is the one I'm looking for? There it is. So then we also have this one. This was a big one for me. This one came out at the end of November, and I've been pounding it ever since. Michael Yeadon is part of this. There's a lot of other obviously credible doctors and researchers and virologists and immunologists and specialists and you name it, right? So this was very critical of the PCR. In fact, they identified 10 points as to why they denounced this Corman Drosten report, and I encourage you to go through that as well, use it as well. And every time that we would come to the table with these things, some paid shill or commie douchebag in a university would, denounce me or denounce others, denounce the sources. Dr. Bhakti is another one. He's extremely knowledgeable in this regard. He would be what you would consider to be an expert. He has fully denounced the PCR test and that they shouldn't be using it at all. Of course, Dr. Hodkinson, as we mentioned, Dr. Modry, who's got more letters after his name than I think I've ever seen. They have the experience, they have the knowledge. I mean, Hodkinson is a CEO of a company that's developing tests for COVID. If anybody knows about this, it's these guys. But of course, they're always dismissed. They're always disregarded. And then when we share the information, of course, we are shamed and ridiculed because that's what they do. That's how they do their business. That's according to plan. That's what they do. If you go against the media narrative, you go against the political narrative, you are some sort of conspiracy theorist or right-wing nut job or a racist or whatever label you prefer. And that's it. And while the public is completely blinded by that narrative, they're scared, they're fearful, they're made to be afraid of this virus, they're made to be afraid of the mob. Nobody wants to question, stand up to be counted because they see what happens to people like me and others. So they're scared and they just go along to get along, right? So for the last little while, especially through our protests and whatever, my live streams and posts, I've been really trying to hammer, even on Gormley. Gormley let me come on, invited me on one day. I've been really hammering the 2 points. The 2 points is let's have the open debate. Let's have the open discussion so people can actually see the opposing views and look at the opposing evidence, because it's important. If you're going to dictate to us what we are allowed to do outside of within the Constitution, within the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, then you better damn well be able to prove your position. You better be able to prove that the measures you are taking are appropriate for the circumstance. Because that is exactly what the Charter expects you to do under the Oakes test. There are a number of things that they have to live up to in order to justify limiting our rights under the Charter. And so one of these things that I've really zeroed in on over the last couple of months was the PCR test, because what they're doing is their CT, their cycle threshold value, is at 40. And this is information that was sent directly from the Saskatchewan Health Association. It's very similar across the board in Canada to every province. They ramp it up to 40. This essentially guarantees to get a positive test from everybody. If they've had some sort of a flu or cold or anything even related to corona, they're going to show positive. And just a minuscule, like we're talking 40 times amplified to find this remnant of a virus or whatever in your system. Well, of course, when you base all of these charter limiting rights, actions against the rights, on the numbers, on the case numbers and the death numbers, that's how you achieve it. this is what you're doing. You're overcycling the amplification. You're overcycling the test to achieve the results that are going to support the decision you've made to lock down your province. And it's based on bullshit. It's based on false positives, and we're testing healthy people. So they're actively testing healthy people using a test that's been amplified at 40, rendering it useless, but still finding enough of a remnant of something. And now you're getting the vaccine into people, and people who've now take the vaccine are being tested, and they're testing positive. Again, without any symptoms. Positive test without symptoms. So not only are you testing the healthy, but you're testing the people that have something. Most likely, in most cases, I'm going to argue they have the flu. But because everyone's so scared of COVID, as soon as they get any symptoms of the regular flu or cold, boom, they go run into the clinic or run into the hospital because they're scared they have COVID. And then they go for the test, this PCR test, and lo and behold, they test positive because they can't identify this. If this test is identifying regular flu, which is related to corona, or if it's COVID, or what COVID is. There's arguments to be made that COVID hasn't even been identified, but I'm not going to get into that. This is about the PCR. So they're basing all of these measures on cases, case numbers. Every time the media opens their mouth, they're talking about case numbers. And then they recently added, of course, death numbers, because that's the one that really makes people scared. Death numbers. And you're still diagnosing those deaths as COVID using a PCR test that's overamplified at 40 CT. So even though they died of a heart attack, or they died of cancer, or they died of diabetes, or they died of some other COPD condition, or they died of whatever, they're being listed as COVID death. So of course the numbers are way up. Again, all goes back to the PCR. If you're using the PCR the way it was intended, and there's the creator of the thing even said, don't use it to identify infection. That's not what it's for. You could find exactly what I just talked about. You could find whatever you want to find if you amplify it enough. So they've based this whole thing, the destruction of businesses, small businesses, the destruction of lives, destruction of livelihoods, the destruction of jobs, the destruction of hope, the loneliness of our elderly, all of the consequences to these measures are because the measures were based on the PCR test. The PCR test that is amplified too high to give an actual accurate description of what's really happening. You take that PCR out of the equation, this thing ends tomorrow. It ends tomorrow. If everybody is understanding, if everybody is made aware and understands what's been happening for 9 months, this ends tomorrow. So what happened today? Well, right after, like I'm talking immediately after Biden was sworn in as president of the United States, what does the WHO come up with? They put out a notice, and it's dated January 20th, 2021. Nucleic acid testing technologies that polymerase chain reaction, the PCR, for detection of SARS-CoV. So they put this out, and this goes to everybody. It goes to your chief medical officer. It goes to your doctors. It goes to everyone. It's mass emailed to everyone. Everyone gets to see this because this is what the World Health Organization wants to do. Now, keep in mind, The World Health Organization knew this information that they're putting out today. They've known it from day one. They're the World Health Organization. They knew this information. They didn't just stumble across it. They didn't just have some super smart whiz kid researcher to come in and say, hey, look what I found. You guys are doing it wrong. No, they knew this information. They knew it. They've known it for as long as this whole thing has been around. And just coincidentally enough, today, right after Biden is inaugurated, what do they come out with? Well, they come out with this. Now, it was created on the 13th of January, 2021. I don't know what this number means. I guess it's just a series. It's the 5th, I guess, version 2 of notices that are coming out. Target audience, laboratory professionals and users of IVDs. Purpose of this notice: clarify information previously provided by WHO. This notice supersedes WHO information notice IDMD IVD users 2020-05 version 1 issued December 14th, which is the one that we talked about right around the same time, which was a little bit more vague, but still somewhat left room to criticize the PCR test. This one has absolutely no vagueness at all. It's actually very clear. WHO requests users to follow the instructions for use of IFU when interpreting results for specimens tested using PCR methodology. Users of IVDs must read and follow the IFU carefully to determine if manual adjustment to the PCR positivity threshold is recommended by the manufacturer. WHO guidance diagnostic test for SARS-CoV-2 states that careful interpretation of weak positive results is needed. The cycle threshold needed to detect virus is inversely proportional to the patient's viral load. Where test results do not correspond with the clinical presentation, a new specimen should be taken and retested using the same or different NAT technology. So what they're saying there is basically you have to cycle that test appropriately given the subject's symptoms, right? So what they're presenting, all of the other factors, there's a number of factors, I'll get into it, they talk about that, that have to come into play. And then you adjust each one of these individually so they can give you an accurate reading and give you an accurate test that, this is what's happening. What's in actual fact that happening is people are going to these testing sites. They're a drive-through. They're tested. They're let go. Goodbye. See you later. Whether they have symptoms or not, whether they have anything or not, and no other variables. It's just zoink, take it out, send it in, positive. Wow, we have a case demic. That's it. That's what they're doing. That's what they're basing all of this on. We knew this. We knew all of this 9 months ago. And we've been screaming at every protest that this is what they're doing. This is why it's wrong. And we've been completely ignored, completely dismissed, shamed, ridiculed, ticketed, fined. And we've all been right. But on January 20th, 2021, immediately after Biden's inauguration, the WHO releases this. The same thing we've all been saying, information they knew. They've known all along. WHO reminds IVD users that disease prevalence alters the predictive value of test results. As disease prevalence decreases, the risk of false positive increases. So again, the less sick a person is, the risk of a false positive increases. So the more people that are going to get tested who are healthy, the risk of coming back with a false positive increases. No shit, Sherlock. We've been saying that forever. They're cycling it at 40. Everybody. And they're telling us what we've been telling the world, or trying to for 9 months, that if you're testing somebody who isn't sick, the chance of a positive result is greatly increased, especially at 40 CT. This means that the probability that a person who has a positive result, SARS-CoV-2 detected, is truly infected with SARS-CoV-2 decreases as prevalence decreases, irrespective of the claimed specificity. Most PCR assays are indicated as an aid for diagnosis. Let me repeat that, Mr. Mo. Let me repeat that, Dr. Shahab. Let me repeat that, John Gormley, and every other media bonehead that has kept this hoax alive through fear, using case numbers and death numbers. Most PCR assays are indicated as an aid for diagnosis. Therefore, healthcare providers must consider any result in combination with timing of sampling, specimen type, assay specifics, clinical observations, patient history, confirmed status of any contacts, and epidemiological information. So again, they have to consider all these factors when they're testing somebody. And all of these things have to be considered before you can really say that this person has COVID. And when you're testing this person and they're showing no signs or symptoms of illness, the chance of a false positive has been increased. God. It's so incredibly frustrating and maddening that we've all said this for months and called every name in the book, gone through all of this based on a BS PCR test that has now been verified by the World Health Organization. So, what the hell are we doing? What are we doing? Mr. Premier, Scott Moe, and all the premiers. What are we doing? Here's your authority. Here's the people that you listen to, that you take your directives from. Everything flows from the World Health Organization, this body that we're all supposed to trust, that we're all supposed to follow. This is the problem with globalism. You have one entity that has an agenda that is not in the best interest of the people at a local level, at a provincial level, at a national level, at a nation state level, running and dictating to our leaders what's going to happen to our people. This is what's wrong with globalism. And this can be applied to any issue, whether it's climate change, energy pipelines, transgenderism, you name it. It's all related, and they want control of it all. They want the centralization of everything in this global entity to make decisions for you in Saskatoon or in Red Deer or in Prince George, wherever. An unelected foreign entity is dictating terms to you through our politicians, municipal politicians, provincial politicians, national politicians. It's all being dictated to. There's no discretion. There's no determination on a local level. It's all dictated from the World Health Organization, who had this information before COVID. They had this information when the guy who made it told them not to use it for this purpose. The guy who created and invented the PCR test has told them don't use it for this. But they deliberately disregarded that because it fit their agenda, because it fit their purpose. And not one of our leaders, provincially, federally, stood up to this, except for Randy Hillier and, just as of late, 2 other MLAs, one in Ontario, one in Alberta. Imagine 338 MPs. Not one had the balls to stand up. Not one had the balls to take the heat that we take, that I take. Not one of them had the balls to stand up and say, yeah, you know what? Something's wrong here. Not one of them, regardless of party, regardless of level of government, none of them had the balls to stand up and represent any of you. None of them. None in Saskatchewan, not one MLA had the balls to stand up and say, yeah, you know what? This is wrong. What we're doing is wrong. People are losing their livelihoods and it's wrong. Basing all of this on what we're doing, on this PCR test. Not one. Not one. They all need to be held accountable. All of them. And I can't wait till the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms goes through with all their lawsuits against the governments. I hope there's nothing negotiated. I hope there's nothing that takes the heat off them. They need to be held accountable. I mean, everything that they have cost us federally, provincially, municipally, within the government coffers is our money anyway. So they pissed that all away. And at the same time, destroying our opportunity to make a living based on this. And of course, as I said, the WHO comes out with this literally minutes after Biden was inaugurated. Minutes. This ends it. This should end it. This should be the end. And, you know, in that line of thinking, maybe it will be because now Biden is president, and maybe that's their thinking. that now we can just get rid of this whole thing. Because remember, it was because of COVID that they had the mail-in ballots. And it was because of the mail-in ballots that they had to use Dominion. And it was Dominion that manipulated all the votes. 133 million voters in America, 74 million to Trump. It should equal 59 million to Biden. But somehow Biden ended up with 80 million. Do the math. Doesn't work. Dead people voted. People that don't even live in the country voted. Not citizens of the country voted. And they flip votes. They just flip them through Dominion. So was all of this a ruse to get that done? I don't know, and I'm not making that claim 100%, but it is obviously very curious that this comes out the same day that Biden is inaugurated. So it does make you think. It is extremely important and was extremely important that Trump wins to stop all this nonsense. And again, it shows me how important it was. So I don't know if this was all a ruse for that. I think it's bigger than that, but I think it played a huge part in it. But this coming from the World Health Organization, something has to give now. Something has to give. Just even from a liability, from a legal standpoint, with all of our premiers, our prime minister, mayors that are coming out with all of these restrictions, just from a legal position, they can't now come back and argue that, well, we're just doing what the World Health Organization is telling us to do. If they don't change direction based on what this is telling us, then they're out on their own. See, a lot of this they're going to put onto the World Health Organization, right? They're going to deflect. Even though we've been screaming it for 8 months, they're going to deflect their responsibility. Mo is going to deflect his responsibility onto Shahab as the medical officer, because that's who they were taking their orders from. Shahab's going to deflect his responsibility to Tam, because Tam dictated to all of the health officers across the country. Because remember, we saw the video, they don't know what they're reading. They just read it. They read what they're given, right? And so, and Tam, she'll deflect straight back to the World Health Organization. And it'll be pass the buck. So if they don't take any action based on this right now that came out, then they're out on their own. Then they have nothing to lay blame on. They have nobody to blame. So just watch what happens. I mean, they have to. Now they might do it slowly, right? They might do it incrementally, just not to shock everybody and say, yeah, we're full of shit this whole time. Now they'll do it slowly. They may even use the vaccine coming out as, hey, look, it's working. Our numbers are coming down, which means that they're just cycling the CT a whole lot less. It's what they did in Australia and New Zealand to get their numbers down, to say that, the lockdowns were successful. They just manipulated the test. They run the CT down to 20 and all of a sudden they can't find it. There's no more virus. We look at all of these lockdowns and everything has worked so wonderfully. And then all of a sudden, okay, well, we need it to come back. So let's just keep testing, lots of testing. We'll just wrap the CT back up to 40. They tell these people not to release their CT values to the public. They tell them because the public won't understand. Because the public's too stupid, right? So don't release the numbers because they don't understand. Well, we do. And so they'll just manipulate however they need this to go. They'll just manipulate it. And the media will be there to do the work for them and to put out the narrative that's necessary to cover all these people's ass. That's how this works. That's how it's all worked. That's how climate change works. That's how all of this propaganda works. It's all propaganda, all of it. So the sooner you people, and I'm not talking to most of you folks here because I know most of you folks already don't, but there's anybody watching here that is, maybe watching the first time or whatever, stop watching mainstream. Stop watching the news on mainstream. Stop listening to your radio mainstream. Move to something else. Go to YouTube. Get your news from somewhere. There's plenty of other alternative places to get your information. Get the hell away from mainstream. It's all propaganda. They're all paid. They're all paid. We know this. Everybody knows this. They're paid by the government, and they're told to be in line with the government narrative or you're not eligible for this funding. We all know mainstream is struggling. The newspapers are struggling. They're on their last breath. The news media is struggling. The radio is struggling to find enough advertisement because they're garbage. They're dying. And the government swoops in and say, here, we got some money for you. However, in order for you to get this money, you got to toe the line. That has taken the free press completely out of the equation. They are only pushing the narrative that the government wants them to push because it's money, because it's the only way these platforms stay alive. Meanwhile, I sit here on my live stream fighting to keep my platform, not making a dime. Not a dime. But I'm doing it because somebody has to. Somebody has to tell people what's really happening and share information like this. Has anybody seen any of this running around in mainstream media that the World Health Organization came out with this notice? Has anybody in mainstream even talked about it? Of course not. Of course not. They can't. I have nothing to gain by what I'm doing. In fact, I'm losing by what I'm doing. Meanwhile, all of the mainstream media have everything to gain by what they're doing. Their survival depends on what they're doing. Meanwhile, I'm scared to survive on a YouTube channel because I'm telling the truth with nothing to gain. Way more. I've lost way more than I've gained in all this. But I'm doing it because I actually give a shit. Who do you believe? In that situation, who do you believe? Somebody that has something to gain by what they're doing, or somebody that doesn't have anything to gain that's actually losing by what they're doing? Who do you trust? Come on. Come on, people. I'm not talking to all you good folks that are regulars here or whatever. Like, I don't know. I seen this come down today and I thought, holy, that's huge. That's really big. And don't think for a second that I'm giving any credit whatsoever to the World Health Organization. They knew this information going into all this. They knew exactly what they were doing. And they have the whole time. They knew this information. They knew the PCR test was horseshit. They knew it. And ask yourself, just at a completely basic level, just ask yourself why they would release this information today. 1 year after we were all made aware of this deadly virus. Why did they just pick today, of all days, to admit that the PCR test is junk? Coach Dale, the news was this from the World Health Organization. I'm not going to read it all again. It's in the description. Go check it out. But primarily check out the last two paragraphs. They basically say that the PCR cannot on its own and shouldn't on its own determining if people have COVID or not. That all these other factors need to be factored in on an individual basis. And the less symptoms a person has, the higher chance or the increased chance that you'll get a false positive. So that tells me if somebody walks in to get tested and they're completely healthy, chances are pretty good it's a false positive. That's just sort of, that's how this works. And it's all been based on numbers, people. All of it. The whole thing's been based on numbers. Numbers. Media never gets off numbers. It's the first thing they talk about in every newscast. Numbers. How many cases, how many deaths? It's all based on this test. That they're essentially admitting now, 1 year after, that, yeah, you know what? You can't just test people. And these people that they refer to as asymptomatic, screw all that. It's just healthy people. It's just regular Joe Schmo. But they've put in so much fear into people, tell them to go get tested. So they go get tested. And what happens? Well, the numbers go through the roof. Of course they do. And then we have a pandemic. Of course the numbers go through the roof. And then you have people that are going to the hospital who have a flu and they're testing positive for COVID when it was probably just a flu. And then you have people dying of all these other comorbidities, but they're testing them at 40 CT. And of course, they're finding COVID in their system and calling them COVID deaths. They're not. Where they say the hospitals are overrun, they're overrun every year. They were overrun in 2018 in Saskatchewan. The nurses union bitch every year that they're overrun. Every year. It's the same thing. In the spring, they were overrun. Did the government, instead of killing the economy, instead of killing jobs, instead of killing lives, did they create more beds? Did they create more space for all of these COVID that are going to come with the second wave? They didn't spend a dime on that. But what they did do is lock down a province. What they did do is destroy businesses and livelihoods. And then when protesters went out in the street to protest this bullshit, they fined them $2,800 every time, threatening them, harassing them, using enormous resources, police resources that could be used fighting crime. $12 cop cars New Year's Eve in Saskatoon at the protest. 12. With cameras everywhere. Police cameras everywhere. Ghost cars everywhere. Face recognition technology on everybody there. For what? Case numbers derived from this test that World Health Organization now, 1 year later, admits it's not really good just on its own. Every province is testing everybody at 40 CT and getting positive COVID results. Everyone's hair's on fire. Lock it down. To me, this is enormous. It's enormous, and it should be treated as enormous. This should end tomorrow. In fact, it should never have started. It should never have started. Now, if you want to go back to the days of recommending masks, recommending social distancing, go ahead. Go ahead. As long as it's choice, I could care less. But we hit the streets in the spring because we knew what was coming. We knew what was coming. That's why we did it. And of course, Scott Moe didn't start any of these mandatory things until he was elected. 2 weeks, I think it was 2 weeks after the election, is when he came out with mandatory masks. And then every announcement, it got worse and worse. Yeah, same deaths all across Canada, same death rate all across Canada. Last 5 years. The last 5 years, very little increase. 2020 is no different. Absolutely no different. There's no flu. There's no flu. Because anytime anybody walks into a hospital with the flu, they're tested under 40 CT and they're testing positive for COVID because they have the flu. And why is everybody running to the hospital when they have flu? Because they're scared they have this killer deadly virus that's going to kill everybody. So as soon as they exhibit any symptoms of a regular flu or cold, they got to run to the hospital because their hair's on fire because you've scared them to death. The politicians have scared them to death. The media scared them to death. So, of course, when they get a tickle in their throat, they're running to the hospital to get tested. And they're testing positive because the test is picking up all the garbage and giving a false positive. That's why the flu is gone. The flu hasn't gone anywhere. The flu is here just like it is every year. That's what we're seeing. That's not to say that COVID doesn't exist. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. There's arguments that say it doesn't. They haven't even isolated it. My guess, and it's just a guess, because, who am I, is they just rebranded the flu COVID. That's my guess. And maybe it's a strain. Maybe the flu is a strain that was a little worse this year than other years. But 2018 was a pretty bad year. They could have very easily called that a pandemic in 2018 because of the number of people that were getting sick with the flu. Was anything locked down? Did anybody wear a mask? All you virtue signalers running around bitching at me because I don't wear a mask, telling me I'm killing grandma. What about grandma that you killed in 2018 when you were running around with the flu? That the elderly are susceptible to, that the elderly are frail to, and will die in cases if they have because of other conditions and they're old and frail. How about all those people you killed when you walked around in 2018 without a mask on? 2016, 2015, your whole life without a mask, spreading your germs and flu. You spread it to somebody, they go and visit grandma dies. I hope you feel really guilty. No, I don't, because that's just how this works. It's called life. And we got to start living it. Yeah, well, that's the other thing, right? Then at a later date, months, years go by, then they release something else that reacts with whatever they put in the vax, and people die, get disease. Right. Absolutely. And they said that. They've said it. People now that have taken the vaccine get tested a few weeks later and they're testing positive. Of course, they're testing positive. So, anyways, that's what I wanted to talk about in this regard. I think it's extremely important that this information gets out. Come hell or high water, get it out. Share the link. It's in the description. Share it, share it, share it. Call bullshit. Flood Scott Moe's Facebook page with this link. Share it. Go to his Twitter, tag him in a tweet with this link and ask him what's going on. Flood these social media. Go to the Star Phoenix and put this link in the comments and ask them to do their job. Go to all the media outlets. Go everywhere with this thing because it's big. It's huge. People need to know this. Gonna switch gears for a minute and talk a little Canadian politics now. Because Canadian politics is delicious. As frustrating as it is. Hang on, I gotta take a haul off my vape here. Give me a second. Yeah, good point, Colin. I'm glad you brought that up. So not only have we established we did this a long time ago, but we've identified the World Health Organization finally telling everybody what we've been telling everybody, and really, in a weird sense, vindicated. But again, don't forget the WHO know this. This isn't like new information. They just. But the other thing to this, and thanks again, Colin, for bringing it up, is through all of this, if we were really and truly acting to protect our elderly and saving the elderly's lives, we would have offered them ivermectin. We would have offered them HCQ and other effective therapies. And we damn well should start from this day forward as effective therapies and prophylaxis. If we truly care about the elderly, which I would argue the globalists could care less because they're a drain on resources. That's the truth. But you see how it works is they create the narrative that we're killing grandma. The media supports that narrative. They pump that narrative out. Anybody who's not following the rules is killing grandma. Meanwhile, grandma would have lived if the government would have promoted or distributed ivermectin, HCQ, or some other effective therapy. Or even in a preventative sense, prophylactic. But they didn't do that because they don't care. But they're using us as the scapegoat. They're using us as the people and labeling us as the people that don't care. Through the media. The awful, disgusting media. You know, we had a rally in Moose Jaw last weekend. It's a great rally. A little over 100 people. I would have liked to have more. In fact, I'm glad I didn't talk shortly after that rally because I probably would have been giving people shit again because I wanted a whole lot more. But whatever. We did what we did. It was a good rally. And then this douchebag of a camera person, I think, made some unprovable claims. And I would suggest, because I was there, bogus claims. We saw her walking through the crowd, taking pictures. I never heard anything derogatory, threatening, and of course she claims that there were threats made. There weren't. None of that took place. None of it. But you see how this works in this world we live in. We're all living in high school, right? It doesn't matter. Perception is what rules the day. Reality can take a hike. Doesn't matter. As long as it fits the narrative, hey, everyone believes it. It's what they did in 30s Germany. It's what they did in Soviet Union. It's what they did in China. It's what they did in every communist state or totalitarian state. It's what they do. They damn, shame, dismiss, ridicule all the dissenters. This is where we're living right now in Canada. Through propaganda, through media. And we better put the brakes on it, folks. Anyway, now we'll switch gears to Canadian politics. I show you the video, but of course my broadband is whatever. Fixed Friday. Anyway, Press Progress. My favorite little commie rag. The same rag that wrote a hit piece on me 2 weeks ago, if you guys are familiar. Maybe a lot of the folks on YouTube didn't see that. Maybe we should show the good folks of YouTube that missed it the last time what they wrote about me. Have a look. And again, speaking of shaming and propaganda, here's a perfect example. And it leads into the Derek Sloan story. All right, so there's a wonderful picture of me and Max taken during the campaign. And there's the headline. Saskatchewan's COVID-19 Christmas Freedom Rally is being organized by a racist conspiracy theorist. Because that's what they do. That's what they use. That's what I'm racist and I'm a conspiracy theorist. This is it. This is what they do to shame, dismiss, ridicule, label, to get the rest of the population to believe it so they don't fall. Now, I'm one guy across this country. I'm one guy. I'm it. One guy. There's many, many, many people across the country, but I'm it, according to Press Progress. Why did they pick me? Is it because I'm the loudest? Or is it because I'm over the target? Combination thereof. I'm over the target and I'm reaching a significant amount of people. So, Anti-Hate Network, who's funded by our tax dollars, Trudeau and his liberals, and George Soros, gets a hold of Press Progress, who's funded by the Broadbent Institute, who's also funded by Soros, to throw out the hit piece. Now we got to hit this guy. We got to destroy this guy. We got to destroy his reputation. We got to, do whatever we can. So they write this garbage, and immediately after it's released, they called me for an interview. Not an interview. They wanted me to respond to the allegations made by antihate.ca. And I said, sure, give me a call. Call me. I'll talk to you. Because normally, when the media schedules an interview with me, I do it and I record it in full. And they know this. So they refused. They refused to call me to get my comments. They demanded that I comment in an email. And I said, no, I won't do that. No comment. Other than it's bullshit. And you know it. And of course, I have the emails. But they refused to call me. Anyways, they write it anyway. Of course. Feigning like they actually, giving me an opportunity to comment, which they didn't. And they release it. Immediately after it's released, a guy by the name of Dr. Kyle on Twitter, Dr. Kyle Anderson on Facebook, our resident commie, promoting the narrative while pushing his ideology, also shares this hit piece. And he's local, so exposing this to a lot of people in Saskatoon. And funny enough, my business gets associated. And here we go again. I don't know if you guys remember last summer, me going through this whole attack on my business. Well, it started again. So this is how this all works. They want to destroy me. And, I haven't had work for about 2 months. So we'll keep plugging away. But this is how this works. This is what they do. This is propaganda. So I can put the link for this in the description as well if you want. I don't have to go through it. It's a whole bunch of bullshit. But I just wanted to show that's just as an example of what happens. So, Press Progress is the same commie rag that did some investigative journalism. Which means they broke into an outhouse, jumped into the shitter, filled a bag full of shit, and threw it onto some digital platform. Regarding Derek Sloan. So Derek Sloan, I just think it's just phenomenal. Derek Sloan is accused of accepting a donation of $131 from an individual by the name of Paul Fromm. Paul Fromm, again, I can't confirm this, is accused of being a Nazi or a white nationalist. I don't know because I don't know the guy. I mean, who knows? I can't take Press Progress word for it. I can't take Anti-Hate's word for it. So who knows? I don't know if he is or not. It doesn't matter because it doesn't matter in this instance. He donates $131 to Derek Sloan's campaign. Now, it just so happens that Derek had no idea, and why would he? Why would anybody in his campaign team know the names of all the people who have donated? 13,000 donors. How's he going to know everybody? And who goes through the names with a fine-tooth comb to see if they have some sort of nefarious connection? Insane. But the donation came under the name Frederick P. Fromm, which, even if somebody had heard the name Paul Fromm, most people wouldn't make any connection anyway, but he actually hid his name and donated as Frederick P. Fromm. So nobody knew, and how would you? And as it turns out, the 10% of those donations, so $13 of that particular donation, went to the Conservative Party. Did they do any super due diligence to figure out who's donating to everybody, accounting for the 10% they're getting in return? No. Absolute insanity. Then we come to find out that it was most likely an inside job. So they could get rid of Derek. So they could be relieved of this anvil around their liberal neck. Let's just get rid of Derek Sloan. And this is how they do it. And what do? They vote. O'Toole says, yeah, this is what's going to happen. And they have a vote, and lo and behold, of course, Derek Sloan is gone. It's just insane. And as it turns out, the other irony and, of course, hypocrisy, Justin Trudeau and his Liberal government through COVID sent Paul Fromm, this Nazi, apparently, gave him money, COVID relief of some description. You can't make this shit up. You can't make this shit up. Yeah, Colin. Of course. Colin says every white person that loves their country is a white nationalist. Yeah, I'm a nationalist and I'm white. Doesn't mean I'm a white nationalist, but it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter because it's not about reality. It's all about perception. It's all about perception. We live in a fake universe. We live in a fake world where everything is perception. Nothing is reality. Yeah, RIP CPC is right. I mean, probably not, because there's enough. I mean, I don't understand it. I mean, there's no daylight between liberals and conservatives. There hasn't been for a long time. But especially now, they're essentially the same party. They have the same policy. They're all committed to the globalist agenda, which is exactly why they're doing what they're doing, which is exactly why they're kicking out Derek Sloan and Salim Mansour and anybody else who steps out of line, because they have a commitment to the UN, to the globalist agenda. They've committed. They're fully in. We know this. There's nothing to hang on to anymore. I don't know why they just don't join the liberals. All of these, because it's controlled opposition. Because everybody who supports the CPC thinks they're opposition. They're not. They're absolutely 100% not opposition. They're controlled opposition. They get their benefits. They get what's coming. Just play the game. Same as the Republicans down in the States. The same ones that screwed over Trump. Same thing. The Republican Party is exactly the same as a conservative party. They're not Republican. They're not about national values. They're about globalist values. All of them. Well, not all of them. There are some Republicans that stood up. But that's where we're at. That's so I don't know, folks. I mean, if you're with the CPC still and you think you're conservative, or you truly do hold conservative or even Canadian values, what the hell are you doing there? Like, what the hell are you doing? Derek Sloan even put out a tweet short time ago saying, don't quit the CPC. Make sure you fill the convention and keep your seat to the convention so they don't fill it with more Reds. You know what? I get it. I mean, I know what you're trying to do, but you're beating a dead horse and you're in our way. The Conservative Party is in our way. They're in the way of the patriot. They're in the way of the people, the nationalist, the people that are concerned about Canada, our country, and our best interest, and the values that we all, in most, share: freedom, sovereignty, liberty, justice, prosperity. And you're simply in the way. That whole party is in the way of us uniting, coming together to ward off this globalist, to oppose globalism and the globalist agenda, the Great Reset, whatever, call it what you want. We have to unite. The people have to unite. And the Conservative Party is only there to stop that. That's their only reason to exist. The rest of it is theater. It's all kabuki theater. Seriously, conservatives, get it through your head. That party is finished. It's done. It's dead. It's globalist. It's committed. They're the party that signed it in 92. They brought it into law in 2008. They signed it again in 2015. Come on. They're done. If you have Canadian values and you cherish those values, that party is done. The Liberals, we know that they're done. The Greens, the NDP, they're all the same. They're all the same. They're all globalist. They just frame it a little differently here and frame it a little differently there, but they're done. They're finished. Get them out of our way, because that's what they're truly just in our way of the populist, nationalist, patriot movement. And that movement is growing, folks. It's going to continue to grow. Trust me, it has no place to go but up because of what's coming and the number of people that are going to wake up to this shit because of the consequences to it. The number is going to grow. So the sooner you get that party out of our way and join the movement, the better. My answer is the PPC, Rosemary. There's no other party that represents nationalism, Canada first, anti-globalist agenda. I mean, it's such a no-brainer. The people shouldn't even have to ask. If you're at least a little bit politically attuned, there's only one party. That's PPC. That's why I joined it. That's why I ran as a candidate. That's why I take hit pieces from Press Progress. That's why I do everything that I do. That's why I created the Forum for Canadian Sovereignty. That's why I spend every weekend protesting. Because people need to know what's going on. And once they know what's going on, they'll understand if we're going to solve this politically, and I'm not sure that we can, but we have to try. I have to try. Because after it not being resolved politically, then what's next? And we're a long way away from that. So until then, and hopefully we can avoid it, politically, the only way to deal with this is the PPC. That's it. It has to be. And we have to rally around the party. We have to rally and get it some steam and get more people looking at what it is they represent. Get that platform so you can then tell people what the hell is going on. It's the only way. It's the only way. Yeah, AB free. I think I'm even open to talking to Maverick, all the Wexit people, and I mean I'm in contact with a lot of them anyway. But those discussions will need to have been had for sure, because I think there's some room for discussion and convergence, and to work toward that. So I don't disagree whatsoever of reaching out, and I would be open to that, and I know Max is too. So yeah, Jim Bob, I'd love to get Sloan to the PPC, but for whatever reason, I guess he still thinks that he can change it from within. It's not going to happen. I mean, we told him this was going to happen 8 months ago. We told him it was going to happen right after the leadership election. We told him, you're done, Derek. You're finished. And he said, no. And even to this very day, he's saying no. I mean, I get what he's doing, but yeah, I mean, the door's open. I mean, he knows that. Max has talked to him. They've had that conversation. He knows it's there. So whenever he's ready, I guess. But I'm starting to lose faith in the guy, Because if you really do stand on principles and you really do stand on values, then what are you doing? Like, how badly do they have to treat you like a piece of garbage before you finally say, you know what? My values aren't welcome here, and get the hell out? Because, well, I don't know. Absolutely. B. Bappas says, remember, Mark, victory is always possible for those who refuse to stop fighting for freedom. 100%. Absolutely. I'll never stop. I've said it a long time ago. I could be sitting in the gulag and I'd still be fighting for freedom. I mean, without it, what are we doing? Sorry, Rio. I just saw that notice. Yeah, whatever. I'm not too worried about that. And thanks for putting up those links, Rio. Appreciate it. Well, the problem in that case, Doreen asks, can Derek make a difference as an independent? I mean, the problem with that is you're never heard, right? Like, you don't hear, and they get such little time in Parliament. They get to ask one 11-second or 15-second question. So they really don't have a voice for the people that they're representing as independents. That's the benefit to a party. And then, so in BC, we saw a lot of independents running. None of them got elected. But even in the event, let's say we run 30 independents and all 30 get elected. Well, you're essentially, to have a voice, an effective voice, you're going to have to form a party around those independents, right? So that's why platform is so important, because your platform is what guides the party. And that's why I joined the PPC, because the platform is what guides the party. So it's all about the platform. It's all, because that's your foundation. I'll give you an example, personal experience. So when we were in the Yellow Vest leaderless movement, all we saw was division and fracturing and this, battering of ideas, which isn't a bad thing in itself, but there was no cohesion in the movement, and it was like herding cats, and everybody was going everywhere into their own little groups, and it completely disunified the whole movement because there was nothing holding it together. And I would say it was always nice to go back, put on my other hat, the PPC hat, because I knew where everybody stood. They all knew that there was a platform that we stand on, and everybody knew that. And if there was things outside that platform, sure, let's have that discussion. Let's have that talk. Let's do it. But it wasn't in the platform, so it couldn't divide any. So it was always nice to come back to the PPC, because you knew where you stood. You knew what you were about. You knew what the platform is, and it was in line with your values and everybody else's values. And that's how you unite people, based on a platform. So, at the end of the day, I know people don't necessarily, there's some people that don't like the party system, but within the system that we have, it's the best way to have your values promoted. It's the best way to have your values protected, and a place where you can voice them. So it is what it is. It's the system we're in, and like it or not, it's one of the best. I mean, it sucks. The system sucks, but it's still better than the alternative, which is what? Anarchy, or dictatorship, or totalitarian, or globalist, or, I mean, and there's things that need to be fixed. It's horrible. Of course, I agree. Things need to be fixed, and we need to fix them. But I'd like to see Canada as a republic, for example. That would be cool. More autonomy to the provinces. An actual constitution that doesn't have a notwithstanding clause to give premiers ultimate authority and ignore the charter. I'd like to see all of these things. I'd like to see like the American Constitution. But even still, with the American Constitution, look, we just watched in a whole election where they ignored the Constitution. They completely, because the system, they're so corrupt. Even that beautiful Constitution that they have in the States was completely ignored. It's about the people. It doesn't matter. These constitutions are a piece of paper. They mean nothing if the people aren't there to defend it and to exercise their rights under it. It doesn't mean anything. It's about the people, and the people have to wake up. The people have to get engaged. They have to get educated and informed, and they have to stand for something. They have to believe in something. They have to be inspired by something. Everyone out there right now is just sheep. They're a zombie. They're a frog. Seriously. They work all day. They come home. They put their ass in front of the TV and they watch hockey or football or some other distraction. And they could care less about politics. It's coming up very soon that they're going to need to start caring about politics. In fact, they probably should have started about 10 years ago. We wouldn't be in this mess if they did. This is up to us. This is what we have to do. We have to engage people. We have to educate people. This is why I do what I do. Interesting. Susan asked, what do you think of the Republican Party of Canada? I spoke to Rob Carbone a couple nights ago for the first time. And said some interesting things, said some things I agreed with, and then some things I didn't agree with. So I can't say I'm a big fan. Let's just say that. But I'm still open to. I'll talk to anybody if they have an idea that's gonna fix the problem that we're in, and ultimately all the problems are based on globalism. So, but he's got some interesting ideas and some ideas that I don't agree with. Yeah, absolutely, RB. RB says, you may not care about politics, but politics cares about you 100%. 100%. 100%. I mean, if 3/4 of the voting population actually knew what they were voting for, if they actually understood what's happening, well, the PPC would be in government, and the globalist, the UN agenda would be gone. Pipelines would be being built right now in Canada to the Canadian coast. This whole Paris Accord would be chucked out. There'd be no carbon tax. I mean, all of it. Be completely self-reliant, self-determining nation of Canada. Our reserves would, well, we probably wouldn't even have reserves because we ditched the Indian Act and let people have an opportunity to prosper and if they want their areas, whatever, let's get that done. Let's negotiate that, get it finished, and here you go. Here's your land. I mean, most of our problems would be resolved. And that's not to say we wouldn't still have any, because of course we would. But if if everybody that votes actually understood what they're voting for and what it means and what's happening, it'd be a completely different country right now. But they don't, and that's up to us. Yeah, Greg, that's a good point. I was actually going to mention that earlier. It came to mind and I forgot. But Greg says, I don't like how the Epoch Times tries to pin everything on China. Good globalist, bad globalist. Yeah, and in that sense, they're very dedicated and sort of committed to the narrative that this terrible virus is what it is what it's advertised as. And because their narrative is to blame China and that they created as essentially a bioweapon. And that's not to say that, there may be something to that. I think it's highly likely that they manipulated the flu virus into what this is, because it does obviously, it's a little bit worse than the flu in terms of, how sick some people get. And like I said, generally the elderly, the frail, the sick. But it's definitely something. So I mean, there's an argument that can be made for that, but it's always, in order for them to keep that, they can't stray from anything else. So I see that in them, and they are very anti-Chinese, which I'm fine with. Communists, by the way, not just the Chinese. They have a lot of Chinese folks working for the paper or working for that outlet, and Hong Kong Chinese, people that are against Communist Chinese party. So yeah, I get it. They're what they are, but I still like what they do. They're doing good work, generally speaking. But I agree to a certain point. Ditch cable, stop watching MSM in Canada and US, hit them in the bottom line. Absolutely, crayfish. I mean, God, like, what's there to watch anyways? It's all garbage. It's all complete garbage. It's all propaganda. I mean, you can't even watch sports now without being completely hammered with Marxist bullshit. Yeah, I mean, seriously, what are you missing? God, the crap that's, I don't know. Anyways, folks, I think we're going to wrap it up and carry on with our evening. Thanks for joining. Where did that go? Oh, give me a sec here. There we go. Yeah. So anyways, thanks guys. Share this out. And also remember, as I said at the beginning, based on the content tonight, I'm going to assume that I'm going to get my third strike as soon as this is over. So if you want to continue to follow me, if I do get banned from YouTube, and really, I mean, I had, somewhere between 250 and 300 in here tonight. Majority came from YouTube. So you guys over in YouTube, you really got to follow me over at DLive. And I am eventually going to migrate over to Rumble. So you might as well register there because they're going to be offering live streaming. So is Odyssey, from what I understand, too. And I'm there, so you might want to follow me there as well. But if you like to join and you want to be part of this, this could be the last kick at the YouTube cat. So make sure you... Oh, thanks, Rio. You're a good man, Rio. Look at that. He just throws it right up there. Didn't even have to ask. So there you go. Head on over to them platforms, and I'll be back on Facebook in 2 days. I think it's up, but there again, my lifetime is short for Facebook. So in that kind of thing, go to Gab. I'm over on Gab. It looks pretty good. I like it. It's back up. It's running pretty good. Still a few glitches here and there, but they're working on it. But it's a pretty decent platform. So if you want to follow me there, by all means, do it. Anyways, guys, that is it for tonight. Have a good night, and I'll probably see you possibly tomorrow, most likely Friday. Well, definitely Friday. Salim will join us, and we'll talk a little bit more China. And, oh, right, one more thing before you go. So I announced through GoFundMe, and anybody who donated has probably gotten that notification. I also posted on Twitter and Facebook that we are refunding all of the donations, because we're confirmed essentially with Rebel and JCCF. It may be a combination, maybe one or the other, and so we're refunding the GoFundMe. That being said, I also put another update that, if you donated to the GoFundMe and I'm refunding you, if you can, just convert that, send it back over to the Forum for Canadian Sovereignty, because we need funding there too. And so that would be greatly appreciated. Because what we want to do is going to cost money, and we're looking at a billboard campaign. We're still trying to work out some details with that, because none of the billboard companies want to accept our money and take our business because of the message. So we're going to have to get creative and probably put up a tractor trailer on the highway with the message that we want. So, and that reminds me too, if there's anybody that knows anybody that, or is that somebody that has land that borders the highway between Saskatoon and Regina, between Saskatoon and Yorkton, between Saskatoon and PA, or Saskatoon and North Battleford, let me know. Send them in my direction. They can email me info@ffcs.info, because we're looking for a place that we can put up a 30-foot tractor trailer with our message, for everybody to see. So it's on the screen now. Thanks, Rio. Send them our way. If you guys know anybody that has land that borders the highways, get in touch with us, because we need somewhere to put this thing. We're ready to go. We just have to get the thing printed, but I'm not going to get it printed until we can nail down some land. So the rest of the thing is, the logistics are pretty much in place. So anyways, if you guys want to help in that way, that'd be greatly appreciated, because we're working hard and we're trying to do things to bust through the media narrative, to get our message out to people in any way, shape, or form, and that costs money. So, and I know it's tough times, man. I'm hurting, like I'm really hurting, and so I get it. But if any of you folks are in a little better position, greatly appreciated. Anyways, thanks, guys. Much appreciated. And Highway 16 west of Vermilion. Okay. Well, anybody that has any, right, those connections, send me an email, because I'll never remember just looking at it in the chat. So send me an email. Anyways, guys, thanks. And remember, globalism bad, nationalism good. Ciao for now.